how can I put this? It's hard to really like, you know. I mean, he meant the world, you know, man. to music, period, to hip hop, to Long Beach.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's as far as I can go. It's like he meant the world to us, you know.
The passing of Nate Dogg probably hit his closest friend the most in the hip-hop world. Warren G is no stranger to losing close friends and people he's worked with. He's been active in the music industry back when Tupac and Biggie were running the world. Sadly, his life has been hit with blow after blow, from losing loved ones to trouble in his career. This is the tragic story of Warren G.
Just make sure once you come in the music business, you gotta stay humble and, you know, don't burn no bridges and just, you know, get a lot of connections and just keep being a good person. And, you know, that respect and that love will carry you a long way.
This is the kind of advice that someone gives after living through decades of the entertainment industry and experiencing both pain and success. Warren G spent his early days in Long Beach, California. Warren Griffin Jr. had his first son on November 10, 1970, and he had no idea that his kid was about to be one of the biggest names in rap and hip-hop history. His father was an airplane mechanic and his mom was a dietitian, but with two parents making a fair living with decent jobs, they separated when Warren was just 4 years old. A divorce is never easy for a child to go through, especially at an age as young as that. So Warren lived with his mother and 3 sisters in the East up until he started middle school. Then in 1982, he lived with his dad up north with his stepmom and 3 step-siblings. Some of you may not know this, but one of his step-siblings was Andre Young, who later came to be known as none other than Dr. Dre. Warren lived a decent life for someone with divorced parents, but there was always the feeling of having to do better than his siblings. Just 2 years after Warren moved in with his dad and step-family, Dre was already on his way to becoming a successful songwriter and record producer for Ruthless Records. He was also a member of NWA, where he was making huge hits and gaining a ton of popularity with Eazy-E and Ice Cube. These two were legends on their own, and Warren felt like all the attention from his parents was on the more successful son. He was still in high school during this time, playing football and ran track with his friends. He realized his athleticism wouldn't get him far in his life, especially after getting sentenced to jail at the age of 17 for gun possession. With a son like Dre slowly reshaping the rap industry, Warren was struggling to get out of jail. He thought that he should pursue what his stepbrother was doing. He had important contacts and 2 other friends who were just as interested in stepping into the music world. So Warren formed a trio called 213. He teamed up with Nathaniel Hale and Calvin Broadus for 213. Those 2 artists would soon be known as Nate Dogg and Snoop Dogg. They did wonders for the G-Funk sound in the early 90s. But to think that having a famous stepbrother would give him the help hand needed to get the spotlight in the entertainment industry. When Warren sent Dre his mixtapes and demos for him to listen to and talk to some of the people in the business, he was instantly rejected.
I was in the hood doing my thing, so that, you know, they knew, but they didn't know that it you know, it's like, you know, I took him a couple demos, like, listen to this, Andre. You know what I'm saying? So we had to build ourselves, you know, we had to build ourselves and then present it to him. But in the meantime, we was selling candy, working, and just, you know, doing what we had to do.
One day, Warren attended a bachelor party for L.A. Dre, a producer who shouldn't be confused with Dr. Dre since they're 2 different people. It got to a point where they didn't have any more music to play for the party. Remember, this was the 90s, back when streaming apps weren't a thing, and individual CDs and cassettes had to be played for people to have a good time. So, Warren saw the opportunity of a lifetime and decided to play his demo tapes for the whole party to hear. L.A. Dre was very impressed with what was playing and asked Warren if his brother heard it. After finding out that there was no communication between the two, he made Dr. Dre listen to it too. Warren's brother regretted the fact that he didn't give him a chance and invited 213 to the studio first thing on Monday. That was the day when the trio worked under Dre's wing, and the rest is history. In April 1992, Deep Cover was released as Dr. Dre's debut solo single, and it introduced the world to Snoop Dogg. He became an instant global sensation. 213 and Dre's team worked very well together, and they were shaping a new era of hip-hop and rap. They called this G-Funk, which was a subgenre of gangsta rap called gangsta funk. In late 1992, Warren helped produce The Chronic, Dre's debut solo album. This was a sensational hit and influenced a ton of generations of rappers to come. It also gave a bigger platform for Snoop to shine on. But here's the twist that led to Dre and Warren growing further apart. Turns out, Warren had no credits for The Chronic and wasn't paid a single penny, even though he contributed to the album's success. Snoop was the only person to give a bit of credit to Warren after saying his name on Stranded on Death Row. He was pretty hurt that his own brother did him dirty like that. Ironically, the only producing credit he got was for the intro track called D's Nuts. Was this a massive finger thrown at Warren by Dre? He also talked about how difficult it was to work on all the samples that Dre and his crew were finding. I would go get the records, I would take them, sample them up, and then I let him hear it, he shared. I'm like, Dre, listen to this. He'll listen. He's like, that expletive is hard. If he liked it, he would take that expletive and he would change it up, do a couple things. Like, Let Me Ride, I played. That was a record I bought. I still got the break record to this day. Dre took that expletive and pieced that expletive together. When I heard it again, I was like, God damn. A year later, Snoop released his own debut album called Doggy Style, giving him more fame than Warren ever imagined for the members of 213. Nate Dogg signed with Death Row to pursue a career of his own, leaving Warren all alone. The fame and hunger for more success drove these three apart, leaving Warren with no other option but to go back to Long. The worst part is, after The Chronic was a success and everyone around him was planning a tour, he didn't get anything. When I knew I wasn't a part of it is when we were supposed to go out for the first tour and everybody had everything in order and I didn't have nothing, he told Big Boy. I didn't have no ticket, no information, no nothing. So I packed like I'm going. I'm like, expletive. I guess they gonna get my expletive when I get to the airport. Got to the airport, wasn't nothing happening. They had went and did they thing and I was pretty hurt. Warren was the person who brought everyone together and helped produce an album that's considered one of the best releases of the 90s. But people treated him like he was a disposable groupie with nothing to offer. When Warren did get a chance to ask what the deal is with his position on Dre's crew, all his brother said was that he had to man up. Even though he produced a successful album, Warren still felt like he didn't know what he was doing and needed a little more guidance. But in the end, he was seeing all of his friends off at the airport and caught a ride home with his other friend, MC Breeze. It wasn't like he got kicked out of the group though. Warren was still DJing for Dre on his shows, but knew that this wasn't what he was made for. So he grabbed his equipment, his mixer, records, and turntables and crashed at his sister's home. He slept on the floor and spent his time making recording samples and trying to find the next big thing. The only problem was that he was surrounded by people not being supportive enough and actually discouraging him from pursuing music. But this was actually a good plan of his. Warren's brainstorming led to him coming up with Indo Smoke, which he played to Mr. Grimm, Paul Stewart, and John Singleton, all while his brother was still in the studio working on the Poetic Justice soundtrack with Snoop. Warren asked Paul if they were still looking for new music to put on the soundtrack, which led to him playing a cassette playing Indo Smoke. Paul was amazed by what he was hearing and immediately offered his track a spot on the soundtrack.
But I did give him my pager number and he hit me that week. And he was just like, we want this to be our first single for the Poetic Justice soundtrack. So when he told me that, you know, even though I just went through all that other stuff with not being with them, that had like really cheered me up, and I got a check.
Warren felt like he achieved something without his brother's help, who was the person who discouraged him. To make it better, he was literally in the other room at the time. The single featuring Nate Dogg was a commercial success, which got Warren an invite to Russell Simmons' label. Warren was now a part of Def Jam Recordings, away from his brother and Snoop, who were both part of Death Row Records owned by Suge Knight. When Tracy Waples, Chris Lighty, and Leora Cohen were in a meeting with Warren, they played Indo Smoke and said that they wanted to sign the rapper on the track. Warren thought that they were talking about Mr. Grimm and asked them to give him their details so he could arrange something. But the three said that they wanted the guy on the second verse who's not only rapping, but singing as well. Warren was surprised that they were impressed by his rapping and producing at the same time and wanted to offer him a record deal. Warren was also able to buy a bunch of new records to sample from, along with equipment with the money he got from Indo Smoke. This gave him another opportunity to collaborate with Tupac down the line. But before that, people were wondering why Warren didn't play it safe and join Death Row with Dre and Snoop. Was this a way to part ways and focus on their solo careers and grow as different artists? Or was there something more serious going on behind the scenes? Well, every artist knows that they had to face the evil mogul of the entertainment industry whenever they were making it big in the 90s. Like everyone else, Warren also had his fair share of beef with Suge Knight, CEO of Death Row. The thing is, another artist was given a contract for a record deal. Warren advised them to get a lawyer and read through everything from top to bottom, just to make sure that nothing shady was going on. After all, this was the 90s. Contracts would ruin artists to the point of no return, and there are a bunch of artists that are examples of that. But when Suge found out that Warren was scaring away some of his new recruits, he was furious. In fact, he was ready to throw hands.
For instance, it was one incident where a constituent of mine had went and told him that I told him not to sign the contract.
Right.
You know, get a lawyer to look at that contract before you sign it.
Which you would tell your friend anyway, though, right?
Yeah, I did. I told my friend that, and another of one of my another constituent went and said that Warren told not to sign the paperwork. So he was like, "Hey, blood, where Warren at?" And I'm like,
"Is that Suge?"
Yeah.
You hear that? You hear that down the hallway?
I took off. Look, he came out the. I ran, and because I'm thinking there was some stairs. I forgot the stairs was the other way. So I'm hitting the elevator, trying to get.
It's like that scary movie with the white girl.
Suge grabbed Warren by the collar in front of his homeboy Cisco and started yelling at him, pinned against the wall. Knowing the CEO of Death Row, he's the kind of person to take the name of the company very seriously. Since Warren was practically stopping money and fame from coming Suge's way, he was an instant target. So the altercation in the elevator could have gone south if it weren't for Warren's family. He threatened Suge, telling him that if he didn't let go of him, he'd call Dre and all his homeboys to back him up. Even if Warren and Dre weren't seeing eye to eye in the music industry, one thing's for sure, Dre would have his back for anyone that he considered family. Even Cisco, the person who was an eyewitness to what was happening, was a gunner, and he was prepared to fire shots within the building. But Warren didn't want anything to escalate because he had things under control. Surprisingly enough, this wasn't exactly the moment that made Warren think that he wasn't welcome to Death Row. It was actually when he wasn't invited to the tour with Dre. But Def Jam was going to bring him new waves of success for sure. Warren still worked with Death Row though, like the time in April 1994 when he worked with Nate on Regulate from the Above the Rim soundtrack. The single was stuck on the popular songs chart on the Billboard Hot 100 for around 20 weeks. From those 20 weeks, 18 were spent in the top 40. From those 18 weeks, the single was number 2 for 3 weeks. Regulate was clearly the big break Warren was waiting for. It dominated charts of every category, whether it was the top 100s or even the MTV charts. People from Japan who didn't know any English knew the lyrics to the single by heart. It was that big. The single may have been shared by both Def Jam and Death Row. Nate, who represented Suge, was just a feature, and the track was mainly Warren's. Who knew that the person Dre denied entry to his tour would revolutionize the rap game before they knew it? Warren combined both R&B and the essence of rap and storytelling. He created a subgenre that had every street on the West Coast bumping their heads and playing it on repeat. Revolve had the storytelling that the 90s gangsta rap was known for, along with beats that no one could have imagined would blend together. This is why the co-founder of Def Jam Records, Russell Simmons, said, "Warren's music was worldwide because the melody plays no matter what the language." Looking at the success that this single brought him, Warren decided that it was time to release a full-length album. Here, he was concerned and used the G-Funk subgenre that he used to mix and record the single. Regulate G-Funk Era was released in June 1994 and sold 1 million copies in just 3 days. 2 months after its release, it was certified platinum twice and debuted on the 2nd spot on the popular albums chart from the Billboard 200. It wasn't common for someone who was considered to be a DJ to sell 2 million copies and have their record turned multi-platinum twice. Many people think that he would never have found this kind of success if he signed to Death Row instead of Def Jam, apart from the beef with Suge and always being left behind by whatever Death Row members were doing. It got to a point where he wasn't even given a Death Row jacket. Warren felt awkward being out of place from everyone else, and the record deal with Def Jam was a blessing in disguise. The only thing that would have made this success 1,000 times better was if he could share it with his brothers. But everyone was too busy doing their own thing with different labels. The thing is, Suge still wasn't letting go of what happened between him and Warren. In one of Suge's interviews behind bars, he spread a rumor that Dre would beat Warren around just so he knew his place. He said, "You know when you was trying to use the phone when you wasn't supposed to in front of Andre, your brother, slapped your around so much you start saying, okay blood, please don't do it no more. I'm sorry. You can say that that didn't happen, but everybody knows it's true. I'm not trying to promote negativity, but if you want to lie while I'm there, you and I can sit down in the room, just me and you, and history will repeat itself. Warren wasn't happy about the way his image was being portrayed by someone as big and influential as Suge. He was never taken seriously ever since he walked into that studio to work on The Chronicle, with Dre not getting credits, not getting invited to tour, and always being treated like a third wheel throughout his career was something that Warren had to fight against. He had to work on himself all alone and build an image of his own. So, instead of staying quiet and not saying against Suge, he popped off with a response.
Suge, you right. History would repeat itself. Cause you wasn't on in the room. You wasn't by yourself. There was other people in the room too. I'm not gonna say no names because like you said, we don't talk. So why you on here talking? Let that shit go, man.
He also addressed Suge, saying that Snoop and Kurupt wrote his entire album. The truth is that Suge asked them to write a few songs himself, while Warren wrote everything else. He was confused as to why Suge was out to get him with all these lies, jabs, and rumors. Warren revealed that he stood up for Death Row at every given opportunity. When Knight resorts to firing the first bullet, but never manages to stand his ground, Warren is there to save him. He ended that video by asking Suge what he ever did to him. He wasn't even signed to the same label as him, but all these complications just gave Warren more experience to become a better artist. Unfortunately, Suge would get in the way of some collaborations too. Warren and Pac already worked on a couple of tracks before, and to this day, some of them are considered gangster anthems to this day. One of the things Knight said was in response to Warren wanting to bail Tupac out of jail for his mistreatment charges. But the Death Row CEO made it clear and said, "Warren, G, best stop lying. You didn't F with Pac, and Pac didn't F with you. On top of that, you couldn't take care of yourself. How are you gonna get Pac out of prison? Everybody, all of a sudden, they want to get Pac out of prison." Many sources claim that it was Suge who bailed Pac out and no one else, so he was right for his anger. But even before Pac's death, Knight was making moves to not let these two collaborate again. Warren revealed that when Tupac got out of prison, he gave him a big hug and wanted to link later. The problem is that Warren had a couple of run-ins with Death Row while Pac was locked up, so working together wasn't going to be the best case scenario. Because of his history with Suge and his goons, Warren had to decline the offer. He couldn't make new music or new memories with him because that was the last time he saw Pac. In September 1996, Tupac was shot in Las Vegas, all because of the West Coast and East Coast war. This was around the same time when Snoop Dogg almost accompanied the two. Death Row members were heading to Las Vegas to watch a Mike Tyson fight, and Warren, like always, felt left out. He invited Snoop over to his place in Los Angeles and suggested they watch the match on TV. At first, Snoop was sticking to his plant and going to Vegas, but Warren pointed out how they don't spend time together anymore. This little decision probably saved his life because, on the same night, Snoop's pager blew up as they found out that Pac was in the hospital. This affected Snoop on a completely different level because those two were the best of friends. But it affected Warren just as much because he didn't get the chance to work together one last time. A similar fate waited for his relationship with Nate Dogg. These two had no beef or trouble working together, so they collaborated on multiple singles and projects for the many years to come. Unfortunately, Nate suffered from strokes in 2007 and 2008, which permanently affected his music career. He was unable to record anything any longer and ended up losing his life in 2011. Warren worked on Regulate with Nate, and the two were considered to be one of the most powerful duos in the 90s rap era.
Been doing that, man, and just been, still kind of where I am, still messed up, from losing my buddy.
Today, Warren G is a father of 4 with his wife, Tanila Griffin. In 2019, he launched a line of his own barbecue sauces and ribs called Sniffin' Griffin's BBQ. This was something pretty unique for a rapper to do because many of them would launch brands or clothing lines. His influence after working with hip-hop's greats and growing up with one of the best producers of this generation shaped him to be the person he is now. His relationship with Dr. Dre hasn't gotten any better, but he believes that he'll have his back if things get tough. If you enjoyed this video, click on the ones showing on your screen now to watch similar content.